My name's Robbie Crittenden. Most of you know me from the Demolition Derby. For the ones that don't, I build standalone harnesses for the 4.6, ranging between the years of 91 to 02. So today we're going to be working on a 2000 Mercury Grand Marquis. Majority of the work's already done for the Derby. This car will be ran Saturday. So we'll be unboxing one of my harnesses that I build and doing a step-by-step of the installation so everybody can see how easy they are to put in and what actually comes with the harness. So we'll be doing a full install with electric fan, alternator, fuel pump, and the main harness coming from the PCM. The PCM in this car has already been changed and it will be staying in the stock location. It was changed out to a P71 PCM to get rid of the PATS system on the PCM. So that is required to run one of the standalone harnesses. So we're going to unbox one of my harnesses that I build so you can see what actually comes with this. Is a full harness, so you'll be able to see what actually comes with it. This right here is the main harness that's going to run the car. So we'll go ahead and lay that there. Right now we're working below a square body crown bit because it's raining and I don't want the crown bit outside in the rain, so we're having to work around it. This is the alternator wiring, so that's another step part of it. This here got tangled up, but that's okay. This right here is going to be your electric fan wiring, so we'll go ahead and lay that up here out of the way. And this is your fuel pump wiring. On this fuel pump wire here, what I did on this harness is we utilized the factory fuel pump plug and we put the other end of the factory fuel pump plug on the fuel cell, so it's easier just to go from car to car, not have to use butt connectors or anything. So you'll see that later on in the video. It's just something that I try to do on them to where it makes it a little easier on me. So that's all that comes in the kit. So when you start to gut your harness on your car, there'll be a fuse block right here on a Crown Vic or a Mercury Marquis on the 9802. So there'll be a fuse block right here. This is where your factory battery cables would be, or your battery would be. All you do is take it off your battery because I don't need any of this part of the harness that goes around. So you'll just take and undo it, and there'll be a couple wires that you have to cut. But what you need is the black, the hot, and the yellow. The yellow goes to your starter for your start wire. So what you'll do, I already have these stripped off for the video, so it's not going to take forever for me to do the process, but they'll have battery terminal ends on them from the factory. So what we do is we take and we knock out where this heater box goes, and we shove these through the heater box hole. Into the passenger side floorboard. There is a metal bracket here on the back of the head, and what I do is I just grab that and I'll push it down a little bit just to give you a little extra, and if the motor decides to go back against the firewall, it'll shove it through that square hole. Okay, this right here is the main harness. This is what you'll need to install. You can see there's not much to it once I gut it down and get it all stripped out. This is a 9802, so we'll start the process on installing this. This is going to be your hot and your ground that's going to go into inside your car. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that right here on the firewall and get that out of the way. So on this, there's one way that this computer will go, or this harness will plug into your PCM. So this is a stock car, so we left the PCM in the stock location. So you just push that in, make sure it goes in pretty smooth. If it doesn't go in smooth, don't tighten it up because you're going to bend the prongs. So this one's going in smooth. Go ahead and snug this down. Get it in there. Let's see. Go ahead and snug that up there. Make sure this hot in the ground's going across the firewall. I always try to run it up high. Not too much stuff comes up here. So this here is going to be your mass airflow wiring. This will be for stock length, so if you want to run a stock car, it still will be able to reach the stock length. So I don't cut that down. I try to leave that to stock length. So we'll go ahead and plug that in here on the mass airflow. This is your air temp. I still have to put an air filter on here, so I'm not going to put that on, but you know the process of that. So here, this is just plug and play. I pull the two here up above it, above the brake booster between the two. So go ahead and plug that in. Plug your gray one in. And then this one here's your main engine harness. You'll pop that in there. It's a 10 mil also. Same thing. If it doesn't go in smooth, don't crank it down. You'll bend the pins in there and it's a nightmare. So go ahead and get that going together. Should go pretty smooth. This is the stuff I can't heat up, I'm sorry. So I'll put this in here. Okay. Everybody always picks on me about using a bunch of zip ties, but I think it can make or break you. So go crazy or don't at all. It's up to you. I always pull this up here and then take one big zip tie and just try to tie it up here below this. Sometimes you can get lucky and get it up here, but I think it just makes it really, really too tight. So right up behind the brake booster, I usually put the engine main down here. Just try to get that in there and get that tight. Cut that off so we don't look funny driving around with a bunch of zip ties sticking out everywhere. Okay, that's done. So like I said, you can go crazy with zip ties. I'm not going to do it for this video, but it all will be eventually tied up good. So that right there is your harness. That's how it's going to look. So here's your hot and your ground. Ford put some holes here going across a firewall that you can utilize. That makes it really easy to hold this up here. So just go across through here and fasten that up. I'm gonna go to the other side. All right, so we're on the other side of the car now. So this is the hot and the ground. It's got to go to the battery to go to your main harness going into the PCM. So I always try to run it up above this little ground strap just in case the motor packs back. So we'll take and put a zip tie here. Once again, Ford put a hole here, which was really, really nice of them. We can use it in the Derby world to hold our harness up here. So the next step is to take all this wiring, and I usually put a little bit longer on here. So depending on what battery style you run or where you mount your battery, so it'll reach. So I always put a little bit extra on here. So you'll just take all this and just shove it down through the same hole you shove your starter wires and everything in. Everything will go through this hole. Get it all down in there. We'll deal with that in a minute. Okay, that's in there. So, all right. So from my alternator harness that I build, what you got to do is you got to come in and you got to grind this tab here off. And you'll have to grind this tab here off for the terminal to go down over the stud, so it'll sit down on there so you can turn it in the direction you need. On the factory one, they have it sit down inside like that, so it holds it tight. Ours will be held tight, but I grind them tabs off so that big terminal end is fit down on there. Okay, so now we're going to work on installing the electric fan harness. And on this harness, I put a 50 amp fuse into the harness in case a fuse gets stopped. That's up to you. If you decide you want a fuse, I can put it in there. But on this one, I'm going to put one in there because we're running a stock class. There's a good chance this is going to get locked up. So I wanted something to be forgiving there. So all you do here is you just plug this into your electric fan. Pretty simple, pretty basic. And all these cars are kind of weird. Some of them have the same fan, some of them don't. Some of them have a manual fan and an electric fan. It's hard to keep up with. So on this harness here, I just always run it up underneath of your injector wires here and just loop it around. So this right here is going to go onto the main hot on the alternator. And this ground wire here, I cleaned off a little spot here underneath this stud. You put it in here and tighten that down for your ground. So that right there is going to be the electric fan harness. We always zip tie it up and pull it all back and make sure it's clean. Once again, I use zip ties like crazy on most of the bus derby guys do, but so that's that part of the electric fan harness. The next one is the alternator harness. So we'll stick it back here for a second. We'll stick it back here for a second, and then we'll take and get this on here. I'll turn it over there. Let's turn it over. It's gonna fight me because we're videoing, but that's okay. If it didn't fight me, you wouldn't know that it was real. So tighten this up. This plug here goes down inside here. It's kind of hard to get to sometimes. You gotta mess with it. So that's on your alternator harness. The next step is to feed this through underneath is how I do it. I usually try to go underneath of here and go into the same hole we've been feeding all the wires through. So we'll stop the video to do that just so you don't have to sit here and watch me feed that through there because it's kind of a pain, but that's just how I do it. So we'll come back in a second and we'll have that ran. We'll show you how we run it. All right, so we got the alternator wiring on. I still got to zip tie that up. I'm trying to keep this video kind of short for you. We got it all buttoned up here. Everything's plugged in, bolted down, grounded up. So we run the hot through. I always try to get down here with the actual engine harness. Just zip tie it to the fuel rail. I held the PCV valve hose on there. Just while I was doing it with a zip tie. So that just runs through the same hole we've been running all the wiring through. All right, so now we're going to do the fuel pump harness that comes with my kit. Like I said before, on this particular fuel pump, I kept the factory plug and the factory both ends of it, so you can plug right into the fuel tank, so you can take it from car to car. That's the whole purpose of this harness, is to be able to use it from car to car and get rid of the wiring disaster in these cars. So this is going to be pretty simple. You just stretch this harness out, hot in the ground, pretty easy. So you just plug it straight in here. And that's all you'll do there. So I'll go ahead and stretch this out and we'll come back once I get this stretched out. All right, so now we're inside the car. Like I said before, we got a car above us, so we're having to use a different light just so it's a little bit brighter in here for the video purposes. But so now we're inside the car, the wires that we fed through. So now we're gonna have the fuel pump wiring, which I ran it up and around the battery. We're gonna have the starter wiring, your actual start wire, your PCM wiring, and your alternator wiring. So the next step of this process is to get all your hots together and all your grounds together so you can put terminal ends on them. So we're not going to bore you with doing this and you sitting here watching me struggle fighting this stuff around, which is pretty simple. I'm not trying to make it sound bad, but so I don't figure you want to sit here and watch me do it. So we're gonna pause the video and we're gonna get this all buttoned up. And we'll get it all together and then we'll show you what it looks like once I get to the next step. Okay, so one thing that I forgot to mention a second ago when we were doing this, get situated here, is that I leave the hot on the PCM wiring a little longer, so you'll be able to pull it up to the dash and zip tie it, and you'll just cut it and strip it right here, so where you'll wire these together. This will be pretty much your power on and off, like turning your key on and off. So I don't use toggle switches. I've been put out many times by toggle switches and push buttons on the starter wires and stuff. So this is a straight wired harness. You don't have any toggle switches, any push buttons, anything like that to take you out of the derby early. So we'll pause here in a second and I'll go ahead and get this buttoned up. I just wanted to talk about this wire. You'll see that it's longer, and that's the purpose for it. You'll just pull it up and you'll be able to cut it, strip it back, and you'll wire those two wires together to turn the car, to give the PCM power or to take power away from it. All right, so we got everything tidied up for the most part. It's hard to get all the wires real nice and neat here, just because of we're going to run 2 batteries in this car. So you'll, at some point in time, you might try to switch, and if you got them tied up real tight, you're going to be fighting it. There's nothing worse than trying to fight them battery cables off while you're getting your rear end handed to you. So to explain this, the yellow wire is your start wire. I always zip tie it somewhere right here where I just reach down and grab it. When you touch this to a hot, that's gonna be what engages your solenoid on your starter. Okay, so I always zip tie that there, just where I reach down and grab it. This here is going to be your ignition wire. This right here is going to turn your computer on and off. So if you want the car to die, you undo it. If you want it to run, you'll wire them together. Like I said, I don't run any toggle switches or push buttons. I've been put out of many derbies by having those toggle switches or push buttons. So I'm going to do a demonstration. We haven't had the car running yet. If it doesn't start, then I've got something wrong, but it should start up. So what we'll do is we'll put the hot on. You'll hear the fuel pump and the fan come on as soon as that goes on. You'll wire these 2 wires together like I was saying. This is what's going to give your PCM power. So the next step is this is what turns the starter on and makes it crank. So you'll just push it right down on top of the hot. Like I said, you'll just untwist those, and that's what shuts the car off. This is the start wire. You can see everything's still hooked up, and it is not hot. It's not going to spark, so that's why you can just leave it laying down here. The car dies, you reach down and grab it, and just touch it on the hot, and it's going to crank. It'll crank hot or cold. It'll crank till the battery's dead. So that's the simple harnesses that I build. They're pretty simple. They're standalone. They're pretty easy to install. You can install one in your car in probably less than a half an hour if you're any type of mechanically inclined. So that's it. I appreciate your business, and if you're interested in one, look me up on Facebook. My name is Robbie Crittenden. So look forward to talking to you. Thank you.